Hi, I'm Michael McGinnis. This conversation is about full potential. Obviously, a lot of what I represent and a lot of what my work focuses on. What does it really mean to be your full potential? For years, I woke up every day. I put in my 8 to 10 hours, did my job to expectation, came home, coordinated dinner, ran the kids to their events, paid my bills, spent time with friends and family, taken a course here and there to improve my career. Is this my full potential? Well, I felt exhausted at the end of every night, so I thought so. I thought I was living up to all of my responsibilities and then some, which I really was. But I would come to realize that this was not being my full potential. It was more like being a part of the daily grind and living up to my part of the deal, my responsibility. This is not to dismiss this approach. We all do this. It's just to challenge you to consider the concept of being your full potential differently. Even companies measure potential, in part by using engagement scores. The latest data shows that overall engagement scores stand at 65%. Well, if you were to use the traditional 0 to 100%, this would be a near failing grade. What this represents globally is that 27% of the workforce is highly engaged, 38% are moderately engaged, 21% passive, and 14% actively disengaged. This would suggest that approximately 1 in 4 employees are truly engaged and probably working towards being their true career potential. However, a better measure for me was during my experience as a volunteer and backpacker in many parts of the world. Based on my volunteer emergency medical technician experience and background on ambulance, I spent time helping in many areas of the world, often remote areas, providing basic medical care and treatment. With my interest in understanding cultures, I would then spend thousands and thousands upon hours just listening to the others, their stories, a day in their life, and what it was like to live in their culture. It was during this time that I met some of the most amazing people that I would classify as truly living to their full potential. Despite very often difficult and even extreme situations around them, these individuals somehow maintained a positive outlook versus giving in or falling prey to the victim role. They realized that they had a choice, which was portrayed as either rising above or staying status quo. Along with their choice was another realization that with this choice came responsibility. It was not enough to talk the talk, but instead a responsibility to walk the talk, to live according to their values, to their mission, to their passion. As they shared their stories, it was clear that these people were people of conviction, having incredibly strong values that they would even die for, and some did, along with a sense of a real purpose in life that drove them forward each and every day. This reminded me of the story of Viktor Frankl, a Jewish refugee who went beyond surviving in what had to be one of the worst or extreme situations in the human condition, that in the concentration camps during World War II. His book, Meaning of Man, shares the story along with the work that he did eventually to help others following his release. But he talked about his ability to maintain that degree of sanity and attitude even during these horrendous times happening repeatedly all around him. But it was in my case, as I was meeting these individuals now on a personal basis, that I became overwhelmed by their stories and even more so with the choices they made. One such story always comes to mind. I was in South Africa volunteering in one of the townships, which is where tens of thousands of black South Africans lived in metal and cardboard shacks. Disease, famine, and violence was the way of life there. I was introduced to Michael, who had one leg and many scars. I arrived to find him rebuilding his home one mud brick at a time. As I talked to him, he shared his story. He told me that just a few months prior, the violence that was so typical in townships erupted right there in his own neighborhood, and that he and his family were in the crosshairs, in the crossfire that was taking place. As a result, his wife and daughter were both killed, leaving him alone with one leg and with his rustic home in shambles. That was all that he had. Yet, as he shared his story, I was amazed. There was no anger, but only hope. I asked him about this since I was the one spewing with anger. He responded that he would not allow the violence of others, resulting in the loss of his family and his home, to impact the one thing that no one could take from him: his belief, his attitude. And then I got down on the ground and joined him, crawling due to his handicap, slowly but surely reassembling his home. I spent months reflecting on this, only to realize that here was a person that had clearly living way beyond the norm, and I considered to be living his full potential, even with all of the ravages of where he had to live. There was no escape from these townships. He couldn't just up and leave. He, along with many others I met on what was my modern day vision quest, became an inspiration and helped me to realize it was time for me to shed my victim mindset, get off my pity pot, to discover and become my own potential. It was during this time that I became an avid volunteer domestically, choosing experience such as an emergency medical technician, a counselor at children's oncology camp, and a caregiver in hospice care. It was in this last experience, hospice care, that I learned some of the most profound life lessons. As I spent time with those who were on their way out from life as we know it, I realized that here were people who had no more runway in front of them, but instead only had a rear view mirror now to reflect on their life. One of the many key lessons I learned from these amazing people was that the way they measured their life from an end-of-life perspective was very different than the way we measure life while we're living it. For example, no one ever talked in hospice about work or wishing they spent more time focusing on their career, their job, but rather wished they had spent more time with their loved ones, doing what they love to do and taking time to smell the roses. These experiences helped me to realize that I was fortunate to have learned some really tough lessons while I still had runway in front of me. And now it was only up to me to make the best possible life despite my own set of challenges. I had made the choice to be my full potential. This is why today I'm drawn to teach leadership, and at a deeper level and more profound level, helping not only the leader to be their potential, but to realize the responsibility they have is to be a key influence in helping their employees and others to come to the same realization, to work towards their potential in any way possible. And after all, it's a win-win for everyone in the company. As they grow and develop, they become happier, more content in their job, they become more productive, and the company wins. I'm also drawn to coaching as a way to work personally with individuals who aspire to be their full potential, along with having a sweet spot for talking about these topics related to my book that I was fortunate to have published on personal growth and self-discovery. For it is now that I am working towards being my potential as I seek to self-actualize in my life and career while I hopefully still have time so that I can help others to experience the true joy of life that I had come to learn and be able to wake up every morning with meaning, purpose, love, and joy. So here is to you making the choice to be your potential.